Okay, good morning once again. Welcome to this class. So last class what we were discussing was the, are you able to hear me properly?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So last class what we were discussing the initial part of tall structure design. That means the design philosophies involved. What is the criteria for selection of a structural system? Why we have to go for a tall structure? And simultaneously you are presenting the materials that is used for the construction. So last class Shweta has presented fiber reinforced concrete. Today I think Avyaris will present a self-compacting concrete. Isn't it?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. So simultaneously we will be learning that also. Then I think we have stopped there in the last class, isn't it? The working stress method, limit state method, the ultimate load, and finally we landed in limit state method. Okay, so let us start today. What are the loadings that need to be considered when you analyze a tall building? Can you see the slide?
Yeah, it's visible, ma'am.
Okay, so today let us start with the loading on tall structures. So this slide last class I explained you how the loading is different from that of a low-rise building when we consider the high-rise structures. Okay, so when compared to the low-rise structure, when we consider the high-rise structure, there is a large accumulation of gravity load. That means, as I explained to you last class, from the top floor to the ground floor, the gravity load. Gravity load is nothing but the dead load and live load. Gravity load is represented as a combination of dead load and live load. Dead load is nothing but the self weight of the structural elements like beams, columns, slabs, walls. All the structural elements self weight is nothing but the gravity load. It is acting in the downward direction. Similarly, live load. Live load also it's a moving load in the sense it is the imposed load. That means depending upon the purpose of the building, depending upon the nature of the building, you have different types of live loads. That means if it is a residential building, only you have some occupants and some uh, that is a household instrument, household items will be there. Suppose if it is a library building will have a number of bookshelves, the shelves and the live books, the weight of the books. So that becomes the live load of there. So it may change if it's a commercial building accordingly. So the gravity load and live load together, we call it as the, the dead load and live load together, we call it as gravity loads. So a large accumulation of gravity load will be from the top floor to the bottom floor has to be considered when it is a high-rise structure. And when it is a low-rise building, the significance of wind loading is not that much, but still wind load effect will be there in a low-rise structure. If it is in a windy area, 100% we have to consider wind load if it is a low-rise structure in a wind area. But the significance of wind loading will be more in case of a high-rise structure. Similarly, the importance of dynamic loading. Dynamic loading means it is an unexpected loading. It is time to time like earthquake or snow. So such loadings are the dynamic loadings. So these three important aspect has to be considered when you analyze a tall structure and when we consider the loading on the tall structures. Okay. So here, this also I think I explained you. Dead loads can be assessed accurately because we know what is the dimensions we are going to use it. So accordingly, we know this is a fixed value. Dead loads we can assume it. And it's not, it's an assumption. It is accurately we can calculate it. But live loads, it is anticipated approximately from a combination of experience and previous field observations. Similarly, wind and earthquake also, it is random in nature. It is difficult to predict, estimated based on the probabilistic approach. Okay, so we don't know exactly what intensity or what magnitude the earthquake will come, what will be the wind speed, there will be a prediction. The meteorological department will predict. So a wind speed of 120 km per hour will be, a cyclone will be, but exactly we will not be knowing. So when we construct a building there, we see the maximum, the design wind speed there. If I consider Chennai, we have the, what is the, can you tell me what is the wind speed of Chennai? Can anybody tell me what is the design wind speed of Chennai?
45.
No, it is 50. It is 50 meters per second. 50 meters per second. If you convert to kilometer per hour, you tell me later. Okay, 50 meter per second is how many kilometers per hour? You do the calculation and tell me later. Okay. If anybody can tell me immediately, you can tell. Otherwise, you calculate and tell me 50 meters per second is how many kilometers per hour? Because we usually tell wind load in kilometers per hour, isn't it? The department will say that 65 kilometer per hour, 75 kilometer per hour, 130 kilometer per hour.
180 kilometer, ma'am.
It is 180, exactly, very good. It is 180 kilometer per hour. Okay. So that is the maximum expected in Chennai. So whenever we construct a building here, a high-rise building in Chennai, we should keep that 180. That is the maximum wind speed we are expecting. But it can exceed. It can exceed, but we cannot do that because this 180 is fixed based on the previous experience and the previous observations that is done, and the topological and the typography. This is the topography condition of this Chennai has fixed this particular wind speed. So it is actually random. It need not be 180 always. It can be 40 or it can be 50 or it can be 75. So accordingly, it is random in nature. It is difficult to predict and estimated based on the probabilistic approach. Okay. Now one by one, let us discuss. Dead load. Dead load is the weight imposed by the structure itself. Okay. Then it is constant throughout unless and until it undergoes renovation. Okay. Why? Because when we construct the beam dimensions, column dimensions, slab dimensions, we are fixing it. But during the lifetime, if it has to undergo renovation, okay, then sometimes the beam, the columns affected. So I have to retrofit it. I have to increase the size of it. So in that case, slightly a dead load will be increasing, but you need not worry about that because we will be giving a factor of safety for every load. Okay. So that will take care, that will be taken care by that factor of safety. This slight changes in the dead load. Okay. So it can be predicted. It can be calculated from the member sizes and estimated material properties. Okay. So the dead load can be calculated, material properties. Why? Because if it is a concrete, then your Young's elasticity, modulus of elasticity, E value will be different. If it is steel, then according the unit weight will be different. If it is a wood or glass or whichever is the material that we are using, the unit weight of that will be different. And from the member size and the material properties, we can calculate the dead load accurately and correctly, and we can, this is also a predictable value. So this, you know about that dead load. Now next, when we discuss, it is the live load. What is the live load? Live load is nothing but the occupancy load. It imposes gravitational effects. That means imposes gravitational effect. Means live load is we are assuming, or it is a gravity load. It is acting downward. Okay. So a dead load and live load we always consider as a gravity load because it is acting downward. It changes according to the occupancy of the floors. Okay. It depends. Suppose if it is in a high-rise structure, each floor will have a different live load. It can have that also because if it is a 100-story building, the 100-story may be just like that a floor without any material or without any occupancy. It may be just a fancy floor. Maybe the 99 and 98 up to 50 up to 75 the floor you will have some occupancy. So depending upon that occupancy, the live load of that particular floor can be calculated. Suppose in between 50 to 50 the two floors, if there is a swimming pool, okay, if there is a swimming pool or if there is any other purpose, the live load will be naturally different. So you cannot take the live load from 100 story to the ground floor. The same live load cannot be taken. Or the purpose of the building is entirely a residential building, you can take the entire live load, same live load for all the floors. Okay. So it includes the effect of people and furniture, because in one particular floor you are planning to put a heavy furniture, other one it is not there. So according to all this will be the factors that is deciding the live load. So it is very important also when we take the dead load and live load. Dead load is okay, no problem, it is fixed. But live load, when we consider, it has to be considered. All these parameters have to be considered. It can only be estimated. Okay, it can only be estimated. For that, we have a codal provision. Indian standard has given a codal provision, IS 875 1987 part 2. Part 2 gives the live load. What is part 1 says? Part 1, IS 875 part 1. Do you know that? What is part 1 gives? Anybody? Have you heard of this particular code, IS 875? IS 875?
It's for calculating wind load.
Which one? Wind load is which part?
Part 3, ma'am.
Part 3 is Part 3 is wind load, part 2 is live load, part 1 is dead load. Okay. So part 1 is dead load, part 2 is live load, part 3 is wind load. Okay. So this IS code says, so it's an empirical and conservative based on experience and accepted practice. Okay. This codal provision values are based on the experience and accepted practice. So some of the codal provision, you can refer this code. You can refer the code, and the occupancy and classification. If it's an office building, office and staff rooms, you can take 2.5 kilonewton per meter square. Okay. If it is a uniformly, usually your live load will be taken as uniformly distributed load. Okay, not as a concentrated load. So if it is classroom, the live load is slightly increased because you have benches, desks, students, shelves. So the classroom, the live load can be little higher, that is 3 kilonewton per meter square you can take. If it is corridor, store, reading rooms, etc., it is slightly higher. Can you tell me why in corridor it is 4? Why it is increasing? Corridor you don't have anything, but why it is taking it as 4? What will be the reason? The live load is little higher. Tell me. Pratika? What could be the reason you have a little higher live load for corridors? Anybody can tell me? Please think and tell me why you can, what will be the reason in a corridor? Actually, there is nothing in corridor, isn't it? Yes.
Because many people go through it. Sometimes it's harder to predict how many people will be passing through corridors and the reading rooms instead. The load of the materials stored.
The corridors, it's correct, exactly. It is correct, right? Thank you. But the corridors, it is not exactly how many people are walking through. If there is an emergency, okay, mainly if there is an emergency comes, if there is a fire in a classroom or in a commercial, in an office room, what will happen? Everybody will be coming out. So there will be a big crowd in the corridor during some emergencies. So the expectant occupancy in a corridor may increase sometimes due to some emergency situations. Okay. So that is why in otherwise in corridor we know that maximum people, how many people will walk. Okay. It can have an increase due to some emergency or any some critical situation comes in that particular building. Similarly, storeroom, storeroom, many people, many materials will be storing, so it has to be increased. Similarly, reading rooms, you have many people coming at a time and with all the books, materials, shelves. So that is the reason the live load is slightly higher in such areas. Suppose if it's in a residential building like apartments and all, the maximum occupancy in a particular floor will be a maximum of 10 members in a family. More than that, it is not there. So you can have 2. That is the minimum. If it is a restaurant, 4 corridors. Again, it is residential building corridors. It is 3 kilonewton per meter square. So this is how the live load has to be considered because code provides the information to you. So accordingly, according to the situation, according to the need, according to the purpose, the live load can be varied. Okay. Now, here, as this I was explaining you previously in the initial, a live load reduction is possible. Okay, you need not consider the full live load through the entire structure. Okay, so a simple percentage specified for reduction and for limiting amount. Okay, that means as I was explaining you, 100 story to the or 50 story. If I take from 50 story to the ground floor, you don't have to take a complete 3 kilonewton per meter square for all the floors. Okay, so some reduction depending upon the purpose and the nature of the building, it can be done. Some empirical relation is given there. It is not exhaustive. It is depending upon the situation we can take it. So for example, members designed for, it can have a 100% live load on the roof. Why again? By we have to take, suppose if I am taking 4 kilonewton per meter square as live load on the roof, I can take the 100% live load. That means full 4 kilonewton per meter square. But when it is coming down, I can even have a reduction, 85% live load on the top floor, further 5% reduction on each successive floors, up to 50% minimum I can have. Again, what is the reason for this? 100% live load on roof again. Suppose, I don't know, in case of tsunami, we people are affected, isn't it, once. So when tsunami came, what people were doing actually, almost everybody was on the top floor, isn't it? Almost everybody was on the top floor because water was, flooding was there. And similarly, if there is a flood, there will be a chance of people moving onto the roof and there will be an accumulation of occupancy there. So at any cost, there should be 100% live load on the roof has to be taken. So similarly, depending upon that, a minimum of 50% reduction, we can have it in the successive ground floors. So this is one live load reduction techniques we can use it. Then we can have some other formula. Some formula can be used like supporting members. Supporting members to be designed. Supporting members means what? Which are the supporting members? These are the main members. Your slabs, beams, etc. Okay, so such your slab. Which are the supporting members? You have any partition or any other, just supporting your main elements. Then your live load can be reduced by using a particular factor called this particular 0.3 plus 10 by square root of area. Your area is the A is the floor area in square feet. So this much live load, the live load can be multiplied with this particular factor, that is factor multiplied by basic live load. So this much reduction is possible for supporting. You don't have to provide the full live load for the supporting members. Okay. Similarly, some other formula is also used, 100 into all these things. So these are some of the live load reduction techniques. Okay, But one thing is very important. You have to see here what I have written in red. Live load reduction is applied only for floor slabs, not on storage areas. Okay, if it is on a storage area, there is no live load reduction technique is not possible because full live load has to be applied everywhere. Okay? If it is completely a storage area, in every floor, the full live load has to be given. It is applied only for floor slabs used for residential or any other commercial buildings. Okay, so because of this live load reduction, you are achieving a lot of economy, isn't it? Your design, your member sizes can be reduced, reinforcement can be reduced. So an economy is achieved when you reduce the live load. Okay, so this is called some of the live load reduction techniques. Okay, it can be applied depending upon the situation. You need not apply the full live load for all the floors for all the members. That is what it is mentioned here. Now, the next important load that you have to consider is the impact load. Okay, what is impact load? In addition to the dead load and live load, another important load is the impact load. It occurs due to the upward and downward movement of elevators. You know that in an apartment or in a high-rise structures, elevators play a big role. Most of the time, the elevators will be moving up and down. So you know that when the elevator come and stop with all the occupancy or the full load, it will create an impact on the floor slab. Okay, so that load also has to be taken when you analyze a high-rise structure. Then elevators being accelerated upward or brought to rest down. So that is what I am telling. Okay, so when the elevators, when it is accelerated upward or when it is coming down and brought to rest down, it will create an impact on the roof slab or the floor slab. Okay, so increase of 100% of static elevator load used for satisfactory performance. So we have to consider this elevator load. Okay, this elevator load, that is the effect of impact, also have to be considered when you analyze the high-rise structures along with the dead load, and some percentage of the static elevator load also will be added along with the dead load and live load. Okay, is it clear? Are you able to understand?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Good. Now, the other important load that has to be considered is the construction load. Okay, so most of the time we forget, when we do an analysis, we forget to include all these loads in the construction. That is why most of the some structures failures we used to hear, newspaper, through TV channel, we used to hear this building collapsed or this bridge collapsed during construction. Okay, the main reason for most of the failures during construction is that we are not bothered about the construction load. Okay, so it is the most severe load building to withstand. Okay, more failures of buildings in construction stage than in completed stage. Okay, most of the buildings nowadays we are seeing in Chennai, in Tamil Nadu, this Maulivakkam, in Calcutta one bridge, and Mumbai, and many of the places we see that some failures of the building in construction stage itself than in the completed stage. Why? Because the construction load is not considered in that. So what are the construction loads includes? It includes the weight of the floor forms. What is the weight? Floor forms means what? You know the framework, the scaffolding, whatever we are doing, whenever we do a slab concreting or a column concreting or walls, you have floor forms, isn't it? You make a your formwork. You make the formwork. So sometimes the formwork may be of steel. It itself is very heavy. The formwork itself is sometimes very heavy. So your structure has to withstand that. Then over that you will be placing newly placed slabs. Okay, your slab will be your concreting, pouring of concrete, from a pumping of concrete, because when the height increases, you cannot take the concrete over there. So what will you do? From the ground floor you will be pumping the concrete. So with a high pressure, the slabs will be cast in that particular area. So it is twice the floor dead load. So this much of heavy load will be coming when you place a slab, when you cast the slab. Then another one is a climbing crane. When you must have seen the construction of high-rise structures. The cranes are moving here and there. The materials will be taken to the top floor. People will be climbing. All the elements will be placed in the particular areas. So this crane load, newly placed the slab, weight of the floor forms, all these things, the load supported by the props. Okay, you have some props you will be providing. Then if these loads are not considered during the planning staging, increase cost of construction. Why? Because the structure will have a failure, then everything will be in collapse. So whatever money that you have collected from your clients, everything, so you must have calculated in some way this much square feet. This is the cost during construction. If such failure comes, so you cannot claim it from your client again that my construction building has collapsed, so you give me extra money. It is not possible. So it increases the cost of construction. So this is very important, because as structural engineers or whatever managers, whatever contractors, when you do an analysis, the construction load, all these additional loads have to be considered when you analyze a tall structures. Okay, we understood. So this is what we were discussing: the dead load, live load, your impact load, and the construction load. Another important load is the lateral loads. So this, whatever we were discussing now, were the gravity loads. Okay, all these were gravity loads. Now what we are going to see, it is the earthquake load. For earthquake load, we have a codal provision, that is IS 1893-2016. This is the latest code. And previously, your code was 2002. Okay. The previous code was IS 1893-2002. Now it is revised to 2016. Okay. So here, the earthquake loads, it consists of from the inertial force. Inertia force. What is inertia force? You know. Whenever a moving load is coming in the horizontal direction, because of we are giving a resistance. Okay, we have a tendency to move in the same direction. So that is called the inertia force, resulting from shaking of its foundation by seismic disturbance. Okay, so this is how the earthquake force have to be taken into consideration. So the major principle, when we take an earthquake load, actually we need to consider the design philosophy. Okay, how this earthquake load has to be considered, how it has to be taken into consideration for the analysis. Okay, there are three major conditions. There are three major criteria that is involved when you take an earthquake load. First one is, when we analyze the building for an earthquake, the first point that we have to see is that it has to resist minor earthquake without any damage. Because you have minor earthquake, moderate, and severe. And can I hear from the Ethiopian students, what is your area? How is the earthquake? Is it earthquake prone or it is safe?
Here in United States is safe, but there are some areas that are earthquake prone.
Okay. So, but in India, we have different, similar, like in whatever you are telling, similar way in India also, it is different. From there are different 5 zones are there, with a severe seismic intensity is there, and minor earthquake are also, some places it is there. So similarly, we can have, it's a minor earthquake, moderate earthquake, and severe earthquake. You know that minor earthquake means the intensity less than around 4, less than, we can say between 3 to less than 3 magnitude will be, we can call it as a minor earthquake. Moderate earthquake can be between 3 to 5. Okay. Severe earthquake, usually it is greater than, if it is 6, it is 100%, we call it as a severe earthquake. Okay. So here, the design philosophy of earthquake resistant design, what we need to understand is, first, it has to resist minor earthquake without any damage. So when you construct a building, even a minor earthquake comes, none of the structural elements should have any damage. It has to resist that earthquake. Now, the second point you need to consider is that it has to resist a moderate earthquake without any structural damage, but accepting probability of non-structural damage. That means when a moderate earthquake happens, the building that you are constructing, it should not have any structural damage. Structural damage in the sense, no structural elements should have any damage. That means like a beam or column or slab or walls. The major structural element should not have any damage, but we can expect some non-structural damages like your partition walls or your whatever it is, the what is the other non-structural elements, mainly the partition walls, your windows, or some other small sunshades. So such non-structural damages are allowed in the sense we can accept it. Okay, but if it is a severe earthquake, allowing both but without any collapse. If the earthquake is very severe, your building can have structural damages and non-structural damages, but in any case it cannot have a collapse. Okay, a complete collapse should be prevented. So whenever you analyze, whenever you design a tall structure, we cannot construct any building an earthquake proof. Complete earthquake proof building is not at all possible. Okay, because we cannot predict the magnitude of earthquake and the intensity of earthquake, how the building is going to be shaken. So what is the 3 criteria you have to consider when you analyze it is, it has to resist minor earthquake without any damage, but it has to resist a moderate earthquake with some structural, without any structural damage, but with some non-structural damages, because immediately it can repair and the occupancy has to be restored. But if it is a severe earthquake, structural damages can also happen, like some beam failure, some walls, some slabs, some cracks. Even sometimes some of the columns can have some crack, but a complete collapse is not permitted because the human lives cannot have any loss. Okay. So these are the 3 criterion you have to consider and keep it in mind when you analyze the high-rise structures. Okay. Now, earthquake load combinations are many, but I think I want you to just 1 minute. Okay. I want you to download your IS 1893. All of you should keep all these code books with you. IS 875 part, you can just make a note of it. Okay. IS 875 part 3 wind load. IS 875 part 3. IS 1893. IS 1893. 2016, if it is if it is available, you have to take it. Otherwise, 2002. Okay, 2016 is the latest revised code for earthquake. Okay. So these are the 2 code books you have to download and keep it with you for your reference. It's because we will be doing problems from that. We will be analyzing, we will be studying some earthquake load and wind load calculations from the codal provision. Okay. So next class when you come, your code book should be with you. Okay. So here, based on your IS 1893, 2002 as well as in 2016, there are some load combinations given here. Okay, so this is your limit state design for RC structures. If it is a steel structure, if it is a plastic analysis you have to do, then one of the load combination given in the IS code, it is 1.7 multiplied by dead load plus imposed load. IL represents imposed load or live load. Okay, this IL represents live load. So here one combination is 1.7 dead load plus live load. What is this 1.7? 1.7 is the safety factor or the factor of safety. Okay, so whatever dead load, we are multiplying it with 1.7. So that is why I told you this 1.7 will taken care if there is any renovation or if there is any increase of live load or dead load that is there in the structure. Okay. Similarly, another combination is 1.7 dead load plus earthquake load. Dead load plus earthquake load. Now, the third combination is 1.3 into dead load plus imposed load plus earthquake load. Now, did you notice that if there is a reduction in the factor of safety when we are considering all the three loads? Can you tell me why this reduction is given? What could be the reason when we consider all the loads? The factor of safety is little less. Can you think and tell me? Tell me, Jagan or Kabir. So, can you think of any reason when we consider the dead load, live load, and earthquake load, the factor of safety is little less? Anybody? Shweta?
Ma'am, because it is already high,
Mm.
then compared to the required one, ma'am.
Which one?
The required load.
No, required load in the sense I am considering both all the three, dead load, live load, and earthquake load. This combination, a factor of safety is little. Code says that you can have a less factor of safety. Anybody? Ergibe or Mikias? Jagan? Okay, then I will tell you. Okay. Now if you consider this dead load and live load, it is 1.7. Dead load and earthquake, it is 1.7. When I consider dead load, live load, and earthquake load, it is less. Why? Because if you see during an earthquake in a building, will the occupancy remains there when there is an earthquake? When there is an earthquake happening, when we hear that there is an earthquake, will you stay in your house?
No, ma'am.
You will be coming out, isn't it? Your live load will be completely, almost it will be empty. Isn't it? Isn't it?
Yes, ma'am.
So when there is an emergency, such situation comes, the live load will be, especially during earthquake and wind. Especially during earthquake and wind, what will we say? We say that you come out from that. your occupancy in that particular building will become less. It is not completely we are evacuating. It is not completely. Some places we completely evacuate. So when we consider that building analysis, these three loads together, the chances of occurring these three loads together, it is less. So you don't have to design that when there is an earthquake load along with the dead load and live load, you don't have to do that particular member design for a higher load. For a higher load, you can even reduce the load. So that is why the factor of safety is less. Okay, I hope you understood. Yes, understood?
Yes, ma'am.
Because the chances of occurring all these three loads together in a building is less compared to the previous two cases. So we can have a less factor of safety. The load can be reduced. Similarly, if it is for an RC structure, reinforced concrete or a plain concrete structure based on limit state design, you have different combinations. This is not only the combinations, there are almost 25 combinations in the 2016 regulation. It is given there. Okay. So I think this in detail I will explain you, because earthquake load and wind load we will be discussing in detail later. Okay. From next class onwards, we will be revising, seeing the code books. And from that, we will be doing some problems also, how to calculate the earthquake load, this EL, how to calculate the earthquake load. Okay, so that we can see later. So there are many load combinations are possible. In earthquake load itself, in the load, the code says that, suppose if you have a building, okay, so this is your X direction. If I take, this is my X direction and this is my Y direction. Okay, so this is my X direction, this is my Y direction. So if you have lateral load resisting elements, we call it as LLR elements, lateral load resisting elements. Lateral load resisting elements are nothing but your walls. Okay, whichever you are resisting the horizontal force, any vertical member which resists the horizontal force are called lateral load resisting elements. Okay, because earthquake comes in a horizontal direction. You know that earthquake, suppose if in a building, if this is your building, you are expecting your earthquake load in the horizontal direction. So all the vertical elements will be resisting the lateral load. So that is called the lateral load resisting elements. So, and the major lateral load resisting element is nothing, is the shear wall. You must have heard about the shear wall. Okay, shear wall. Shear wall is nothing but a reinforced concrete wall starting from the ground floor to the top floor, a single RC wall. So this is a shear wall. So some shear walls will be resisting. If it is an earthquake prone area, you will be constructing the building with a shear wall, coupled shear walls, or any other lateral load resisting elements will be there in any directions. So suppose if a building, if the sorry, if your earthquake is coming, it is affected in the X direction and Y direction also. Okay, your earthquake load is coming in the X direction as well as in the Y direction. Okay, and in both the directions you have lateral load resisting elements are there. Okay, in this direction also I have some lateral load resisting elements are there. In the Y direction, if I have some lateral load resisting elements are there. So in these two cases, if earthquake is affected in the X direction as well as Y direction, you have to consider the 100%. You have to consider 100% of the earthquake load. 100% of the earthquake load in the X direction separately and in the Y direction separately. Okay. So wherever this EL I have mentioned here, I have to consider full 100% earthquake load in the X direction. That is one combination. Then earthquake load in the Y direction, there is another combination. Okay. So all these combinations will become double, X direction as well as Y direction. Okay. Suppose your LLR elements, lateral load resisting elements, are not in an orthogonal direction, not like X direction, Y direction separately. If it is in some other directions or some other, it is not completely in the orthogonal 90-degree x and y direction if it is not provided, okay, or if it is exactly the same way your LLR elements are provided in the x direction as well as y direction, then what you have to consider it is 100% earthquake load in the x direction plus 30% of the earthquake load in the y direction. Okay, so depending upon the lateral load elements, how it is provided, accordingly your load combinations can be different. Full earthquake load in the x direction simultaneously with the 30% earthquake load in the y direction. That is another set of combinations. So next class when you come with the code, I'll explain you with that. Okay, you can also refer that. I will project it also. So similarly, in this earthquake load combination itself, we have around more than 13 combinations are there, along with the dead load and live load. So similarly, all these load combinations have to be analyzed because you are not going to analyze it manually. Your software is going to analyze it. So what you have to give the input is all load combinations have to be given. From that load combinations, which gives you the worst condition or which give you the maximum moment, that has to be taken into consideration for the analysis. Are you able to understand what I am telling?
Yes, ma'am.
Please, oh. Hope you are able to understand. Okay, if there is any difficulty, please tell me. Okay. So this is how the load combinations for earthquake load is taken. Okay. Now next comes the wind loading. Okay. So the wind loading we can start in the next class. The coming classes we will be doing some problems with the earthquake, how to calculate the earthquake load, how the load combinations have to be considered. All these things we will discuss in the next class. Okay. So with this we will stop today's class, this first hour class. So what we have discussed is the dead load, live load, impact load, construction load and the earthquake load. Okay. So the first three loads are gravity loads and earthquake load is a lateral load. So the earthquake load depending upon the seismic region, depending upon the seismic zone, depending upon the importance of the building, depending upon the type of the building, your earthquake load can be calculated. Okay. So that we will see it in the next class. So today we will meet again at 11:30 with the Kavi Aristu presenting the self-compacting concrete. So all of you should ask some questions also. Okay, it is not to no, Kavi Aristu, you don't have to be afraid. We can have a discussion. So that it is like a class. Instead of me taking the class, he is taking the class. That's all. We are all listening, and this is a part of your curriculum also. The first unit, the materials that is used for construction of high-rise structures. So last class FRC has been taken. So today self-compacting concrete will be taken by Kavi Aristu. Okay. So shall we stop the class today?